Hello everyone and welcome to IMVO's webinar for pharmacists on common FMD errors and how to avoid them. I'm just going to maximize my screen now for you. So, outline of what I'm going to cover today in the webinar, some housekeeping issues including the need to mute, keep your microphones muted while I'm delivering the presentation. We'll have a Q&A session at the end and you can either provide your questions by unmuting your microphone or by writing them in the chat box, and then finally we're recording this session to make it available to others who aren't able to join us today. So the topics we're going to cover are alert management, common FMD errors and how to avoid them, update on use and learn, and then finally the Q&A session as I mentioned. So starting with alert management. So I suppose one of the things we want to communicate to you in this webinar is how much information we get from the alerts that are generated from the scans that you undertake in your pharmacies. We are continually gathering and analysing information about alerts. So for example, every single alert that's generated comes to us in a report with full details about that alert, the pack, what's gone wrong and so on. We also get a daily scan count. We get feedback from manufacturers, from end users, and when we use the term end users, we're talking about pharmacies, hospitals and wholesalers. And also we get information from your FMD software providers. And we also exchange information about alerts and the root causes of alerts with our colleagues in IMVO and the other National Medicines Verification Organisations, or NMVOs for short. So we feed all of this data into various business analytical tools, and what we do then from the alert numbers, the locations and the patterns of alerts, the products, etc., we can see likely root causes of the alerts. And by having that information, then we know what we can do to try and eliminate those root causes, working with the relevant parties. So the objective of all of this is to eliminate avoidable alerts. So I suppose the key thing from our perspective is by the end of the use and learn period in Ireland, we want to be confident that where there are avoidable alerts due to technical or procedural or system issues, that they've all been got rid of, so that when we see alerts after use and learn ends, we're truly looking at unusual alerts that will need to be investigated and closed out before the pack is provided to the patient. So there's various things we do with this alert data. So if we start off with end users, so again, pharmacies, hospitals and wholesalers, we make contact with the locations that are showing high numbers of alerts, where we see unusual alerts or where we see unusual patterns of alerts. So to give you an example of the latter, we saw an interesting scenario earlier this year where one pharmacy generated several thousand alerts at 6 o'clock in the morning. And when we looked into it further, it turned out it was connected with an update of their software, and that in turn had triggered some sort of repeat transactions in the system leading to all these alerts. As I've mentioned, we also liaise with the FMD software providers. We have a lot of interaction with them. So where we see something that we feel is related to the particular software system, then we go to source and get it sorted out with the software provider. We also chat to the IPU. They give us a lot of feedback from their members on alerts. And we also engage extensively with the HSE FMD project team. So this is the team in the HSE that's been managing FMD implementation across all the HSE and publicly funded hospital sites in Ireland. We send information on how to figure out scanners when we see problems with scanners, and we can pick those up from the pattern of alerts we see in particular locations. We also follow up on emails and calls regarding specific alerts that we get from hospitals or pharmacies. So people contact us when they see unusual things, and we will investigate those alerts out and make sure we know what's going on with them. In relation to MAHs, marketing authorization holders, we look to see what products and what batches are causing the most alerts. We are continuously in contact with MAHs whose products persistently cause alerts. And in some cases, the HPRA asks us for information about these MAHs, and we will give reports about these MAHs and the products that are causing alerts to the HPRA. And we know that they've written to them on many occasions. We know that they've also indicated their intention to inspect certain MAHs in order to see what processes and procedures they have in place. We also contact MAHs when we see unusual alerts, or we see one-off spikes, or we see unusual alert patterns. So these may be MAHs who generally we're not seeing any problems. One-off things can occur, so we would follow up with them when we see those, again, to try and work out what the problem is. Can it be fixed? And if it's likely to, affect future scanning to make sure it doesn't happen again. We also run webinars for MAHs and presentations to industry associations that represent them on how to avoid and fix alerts. At IMVO levels, IMVO being the European Medicines Verification Organisation, they produce regular reports summarising alerts and decommissioning rates across Europe with a breakdown by country, and this report is widely circulated to the European Commission and national competent authorities. So all the data from all the alerts in all the end user locations in every pharmacy, hospital and wholesaler in Europe is pulled in to this report. And we see the patterns, we see what types of alerts, we see the alert rates, we see the decommissioning rates. So they're also looking to see who's scanning and decommissioning packs. And that is sent to the European Commission, as I mentioned. Interestingly, the European Commission on foot of this report has written to a number of authorities, including the HPRA, for example, to inquire about why are alert rates so high. They have also written to ask why are decommissioning and scanning rates so low. So it's very much on the radar at highest level in Europe when things are not as they should be. IMVO then also follows up weekly with companies causing most alerts across Europe, and this in tandem with our efforts with the MAHs at local level has really helped to drive down the number of alerts that we've seen due to MAH data problems, where they would have been very predominant in the early days of FMD. So from our business tool that we use to analyse alerts, a thing called Power BI, we can extract a dashboard showing where we're at with alerts. So if we look over here, we can see that we've had 2.2 million alerts since February last year, since the 9th of February. So that's obviously a substantial number of alerts. We've had 53 million scans. We have data for 485 million packs in the system, representing almost 70,000 batches. And in our report, we can actually check by MAH. We can look at a time period. We can look for different types of error codes or alerts. We can see the breakdown of the different types of alerts over that period. And also then we can see the ratio of errors to scans, we call that the alert rate, and then we can see the pattern of alerts and scans over time. Now, if we look at more recent past, we can look at alerts in the period July to September, so we can see our alert rate has been hovering downwards below 0.05%. Now, if we go back to the previous slide, we can see there were very big spikes. Now, they were due to just system issues of throwing off multiple alerts, so you see 1,831%. You see 60% here, you see 38%. They were spikes due generally to manufacturer issues, problems around data upload. But in the early days, we were seeing underlying alert rates in the region of 23%. So now it's very encouraging to see that we are down towards roughly, hovering around 0.5%. We had a spike on this day because of one particular one-off issue occurred with packs from Ireland that have been sent to a parallel importer in the Netherlands, and when they scanned those packs as part of their checking in process, something went wrong and it generated a lot of alerts. So that would have upped our rate on that day. Now, we look at the European alert rates week commencing the 24th of August. You can see we're relatively high overall in Europe. So our Dutch colleagues were the highest on that day, and our Slovenian colleagues, Hungarian colleagues, and HR is Croatian and Austrian colleagues, they were very low in that period. So obviously we're keen to get down to the levels that we see at the bottom end of that graph. Looking at the numbers, we had our best day ever on the 30th of August. We were at 0.06%. At the end of the period we were measuring here, we were at 0.11%. So it does vary day on day. And you see the weekly trends. If we look at the latest IMVO monitoring report, the overall rate across Europe was 0.48, but again, we've mentioned the highs and the lows. So to summarise where we're at with alerts, so most FMD software at the moment will show green when you scan, even if alert is raised. So you don't necessarily see the alerts. This will change after using our lens, and you will start to see the alerts then. So as I've mentioned, the alert rate has fallen from high of 23%, 0.0 or 0.5%. We are aiming to get that to 0.05%. Now, to give you an idea of what 0.05% looks like, that's about 950 alerts per week in Ireland. From the perspective of end users, we have roughly 2,000 end users in Ireland. So we have pharmacies, we have hospitals, and we have wholesalers. So that represents roughly one alert per end user every 2 weeks. So it's not a big workload. And that's really where we need to get to, so we can have a situation where scanning is not resulting in a whole pile of alerts and holding up things in the pharmacy. The reason why we've managed to get that alert rate down as far as we have is that MAHs appear to be managing their data more effectively. What we have noticed, however, is that because we have effectively eliminated the large numbers of alerts due to MAHs, the end user issues are now becoming more apparent and accounting for a greater proportion of the alerts. We've also seen over the last couple of months, people who would have slowed down or stopped scanning during COVID, we've seen that they've started scanning again, and some of the scanner issues and software issues are coming to light, so they are generating alerts that we wouldn't have seen earlier. One of the things that's consistently notable is that the alert rate tends to be lower on a Sunday. So we constantly, week on week, the trend tends to be low on Sunday and then worse other days of the week. And we think it's due to the fact that pharmacies aren't as busy on Sunday, so they seem to be able to manage the scanning better. I've mentioned already that the alert rate can be distorted by spikes caused by MAH transactions and system issues. So for example, we had 80,000 alerts on the 11th of March due to an EU hub issue. So as you can imagine, our alert rate for that week wasn't great. So in relation to scanning, one of the things we want to emphasize to pharmacies and hospitals is how important it is that you scan. You know, first of all, it's a legal obligation. Quite apart from that, if you don't scan and don't scan consistently and have as many people in your pharmacy as possible scanning, you won't flush out scanner or software issues, and you won't embed scanning practice in everyday work. As you will have seen from what I've presented already, all the data from the scans you do, and particularly the alerts that are generated when you scan, allows us to identify products or locations that are causing the most alerts, and it allows us to investigate and find the root causes and fix them. We issued a scanning video and also a fix and check your scanner guidance documents back in February, and we sent them out again last month. So we would urge you to particularly check your scanner. And this is to check for simple stuff like, is your scanner configured correctly? Some scanners, for example, will not pick up barcodes printed in white on dark. So that's the sort of thing that check your scanner guidance will help with. Scanning levels in Ireland are not what they should be at. The PSI has indicated to us that they will be following up with non-scanning locations shortly. So this is something to be aware of. If you're not scanning, you do need to start scanning because the PSI is likely to be in touch with you. So looking then at end user errors, what I'm going to do over the next number of slides is to go through the different types of errors and basically what can you do to avoid or fix them. So if we look at end user errors, if that's errors that will be caused in pharmacies, hospitals or wholesalers, the first thing we see are non-FMD packs and the wrong barcode being scanned. Now these will generate exception messages on your system and tell you something isn't right. So really to avoid those, you need to watch out for these packs. So the sort of thing we see are out of scope pack scans. So for example, an OTC pack with a 2D barcode on it, a medical device, they are now starting to carry 2D barcodes, and packs with no anti-tamper devices. The reason it's important not to scan packs with anti-tamper devices is that many generic medicines that were placed on the market before the 9th of February would have been manufactured in India and contract manufacturing sites there. It was a requirement of Indian law prior to the 9th of February that all packs be labelled with a 2D barcode in line with Indian law, even though those packs were intended for the European market. They're not FMD packs. The barcode data that's in that barcode hasn't been uploaded to the European system. So therefore, when you scan those, that will create a problem. Key way to differentiate the Indian packs from other packs is to look for an anti-tamper device, as typically they're not on the Indian packs. And then the other thing we've seen is the wrong barcode scans. We've seen people scanning the old linear barcode or a QR code. So to give you some examples here, what are the barcodes to scan and what not to scan? So what you're looking for is the 2D barcode on the left-hand side. So this is the dotty barcode you see here, and you'll see the data in the barcode written on the side there in human readable form. So it should be close to that barcode. And you're also looking for the anti-tamper device. Do not scan the linear barcodes because the data from that code just simply isn't in the system, so it won't find the data in the system. And similarly, don't scan QR codes. So as you know, they sometimes link through to websites. So we have actually seen in our alerts, we see actual website where there's a QR code on the pack as well as a 2D barcode. We've seen actually a website address appear in the alert message that we get back, so we know people are scanning these codes. So again, just to remind you, products not to scan, so products with the 2D barcode but no anti-tamper device. So again, we're showing you a picture there. OTC medicines. There are some OTC medicines with 2D barcodes. There are no OTC medicines in Ireland that are in scope of FMD, even OTCs that are reimbursed. If they're OTC medicines, they do not have to be scanned, so don't scan them. And then finally, medical devices. you will start to see them more and more carrying barcodes because that's coming into play for them, but they do not need to be scanned. And in terms of working out whether you're dealing with a medical device or a medicinal product will have PA number on it, it'll have an EU number on it. For a medical device, you will have a CE mark, so that's typically how you differentiate them. To give you some examples of anti-tamper devices, you know what you're looking for. Now, there are many different types of anti-tamper devices, and there has been very little guidance issued to manufacturers on what to use. But these are the sort of anti-tamper devices we've seen. So you may see an opaque seal, you may see a glued end tab, you may see a clear seal, and you may see something like a foil seal. Now, we have heard some feedback and comments on anti-tamper devices where glue dots have been used to seal a box, and in some cases the glue dot is not apparent. We've heard situations of where something like sachets can be pulled out of the pack around the glue dot. We've seen examples of where anti-tamper devices just have failed, they just have broken up in transit. So if you do come across any of that, that's actually a product quality defect. IMVO is not responsible for anti-tamper devices. We simply deal with the barcode and the scanning side of things, but we do want to tell you if you do see a defective anti-tamper device, so something comes in from a wholesaler, do report that to the HPRA as a quality defect, and I'll give you the contact details later on. So again, looking at end user errors, the other types of errors we see is people scanning packs that have already been decommissioned. And the first one here is one that's quite common. So we know that pharmacies use bulk packs. We also know that they have calendar packs where they take 2 tablets out of it to make up another 28 pack to 30 when it's dispensed. And we have seen repeatedly errors from alerts from these packs, basically alerts saying they've already been decommissioned, because what's happening is every time the pack is partially dispensed, it's been decommissioned. The pack should only be decommissioned the first time it's opened. So that's definitely one to avoid. We've seen situations as well where packs not collected that are left in the dispensed state. So if the pack is returned to stock, what will happen is it'll generate an alert when it's scanned again because you've marked it as dispensed. If it's returned to the wholesaler, it will generate an alert when scanned by the wholesaler. So that's something to note as well. The other one we've seen is where people borrow packs from other pharmacies and hospitals, and what happens is when they arrive into the receiving pharmacy or hospital, they've already been decommissioned. So when they scan them, they get an alert comes up to say that it's already been decommissioned in another location. The other one we've seen is people scanning packs as well as manually entering the data for the 2D barcode. So you're probably aware there is a provision where if the scan fails, you can actually enter the data into a web link and you can validate the pack that way. However, we've seen people using this when the scan fails as a backup, and the problem is the scan has generated an alert, and entering the data then in manually, that can also generate an alert. The other thing that we've seen quite a bit of is where we have packs that have already been decommissioned by a wholesaler under Article 23. These are decommissioned again in the site to which they're sent. So to give you just a very brief outline of Article 23, this article is in the Commission Delegated Regulation on Safety Features. I've given you the details in the backup slides, and basically what this allows is member states have flexibility to say for certain recipients of medicines that the decommission can be done on their behalf by the wholesaler. So as a general rule, pharmacies and hospitals must do their own decommissioning. But Article 23 gives some flexibility, for example, when you send medicines to GPs, nursing homes, hospices, vets, army sites, the decommission can be done at wholesaler level. What we've seen is in some HSE sites, they've been set up for decommissioning themselves, so particularly say some hospices and nursing homes that would be under scope of Article 23. And what's happened is they decommission, but the wholesaler has already done it. So there's a lot of work underway at the moment to make sure that it's one or other does the decommissioning. And if you want more information on Article 23, as I mentioned, it's in the backup slides at the end of this presentation. So in terms of how to fix or avoid these errors, so the key thing with the bulk and split packs is only decommission them once when they're first opened and dispensed. So if you pick one of these packs off the shelf, it has an X through it because it's already been dispensed from, do not scan it again. And it's important that any of your team that are dealing with scanning are aware of this. If a pack is not collected, take it out of the bag, remove the label, and recommission it before returning it to the dispensary shelf. So you need to scan it again and put your system into recommission mode to do this. Important thing is this has to be done within 10 days in the same location. So if it's day 11, the system won't allow you to reactivate the pack. don't send the decommissioned packs back to the wholesalers. And if you're not sure whether it's active or live, verify before you send it back. The reason we're saying this is that at the moment, the wholesalers are ignoring these alerts, but the problem is then they're putting, in some cases, decommissioned packs back on their shelves. They're being sent out to another pharmacy down the road, and they get another pack already decommissioned alert. And when we end use and learn, wholesalers will be told they cannot accept back returns where the pack has been decommissioned, and they will simply send them back to you. So that's very important that you make sure every pack you send back to wholesaler is active, and you can use the verify function in your software to check it. If you borrow medicines, the correct procedures for the person receiving the pack to decommission it, but just in case you get a pack in that's already been decommissioned, we would recommend that you verify it from receipt to ensure that it's active. Don't manually enter data if you've already scanned it, even if the scan was unsuccessful. And I know this goes against what we always do with IT problems. We tend to try everything. The problem is in FMD world and FMD software world, redoing the action may simply generate more alerts. If you work in an Article 23 institution, but do your own decommission, make sure your supplier is aware of this. Now, looking at scanners then, so we've seen issues with scanners set up incorrectly. So with the one I've mentioned already, the scanner not configured for inverse scanning, so a white barcode in a dark background, this is very common. Scanner not set up correctly, it may not be configured to detect special characters. So there's things like colons and semicolons and ampersands in batch numbers and in batch numbers. This may cause a problem. And similarly, serial numbers. Serial numbers, ironically, can be made up of letters and numbers. And some of them can be upper or lower case, and that can cause problems depending on how everything is configured. One of the things that we would draw to your attention is if you've bought a scanner online, it may be configured for the US or some other language keyboard. So that you will run into problems then. That scanner won't work correctly in your pharmacy. So that's something, again, to keep in mind. These are all very fixable, but you have to find the problems first. So in relation to fixing your scanner setup problems and avoiding them, if you got your scanner from your FMD software provider or online, we would ask you to contact your FMD software provider directly or the HSE FMD team if you're in the HSE and get guidance from them on how to configure it. We're aware that community pharmacies were all given scanners by the IPU. So if you're using the IPU scanner, we would ask you to use the IMVO check your scanner guidance to see if your scanner is configured correctly. Now, you might say, well, how does that work? It basically involves literally scanning a few barcodes, and it will very quickly identify if that scanner is not working or not. If it identifies an issue, what you need to do next then is, depending on the type of scanner you have, use our fix your scanner guidance to fix it. And again, that simply involves actually scanning a few barcodes, and that will actually reconfigure the internal workings of the scanner. If this doesn't work, it may be that there's some sort of a problem with the software that you have and how it interacts with your scanner. So in that situation, you need to contact your FMD software provider directly. And I've given you there at the bottom of the page the link to where you can find that guidance. As I say, we've sent it out twice before in February and again last month. Other scanner issues that we've seen that you need to be aware of is if you plug your scanner into a USB hub on the PC, suppose you have only one USB port and you need to plug the scanner in and you use a hub, so you put in a little adapter with multiple USB ports on it. It won't work if the hub isn't powered. So in that situation, we'd say plug the scanner directly into the PC, find a port to accommodate it. We've seen that wireless scanners may go to sleep if they're unused for some time. We've seen actual faults in the scanner taking multiple attempts to scan a pack. So it may be that the scanner is simply not working. The other thing is that orientation of the scanner when it's not in use can lead to packs accidentally getting scanned. So in terms of avoiding these issues and fixing them, if your scanner has gone to sleep, the way you can make sure it's awake when you start scanning is simply lift up the scanner and press the trigger by pointing away from any barcodes. So it's a bit like doing a one-off test spray with an inhaler without inhaling, the same sort of principle. Be mindful of where you place your scanner and your movements in front of the scanner when you're holding packs to avoid accidental scans. So some of these scanners are really sensitive, and if you literally walk by the scanner with a pack, they can pick it up. And contact your FMD software provider then if you have any other scanner related issues. So software issues then. So we have seen issues with the FMD software that's used by end users. So this is the software with the scanner connected that you use to scan packs. The sort of things that we've seen is expiry dates getting changed. So manufacturers have been advised that where they have a pack with an expiry date in month and year, in the barcode, they actually include 00 instead of a date. The difficulty we have is that a number of software systems are programmed not to understand 00 as a date. So they will automatically change 00 to the last day of the month. So 3/1, say if it's January, 2/8 if it's February, 3/0 if it's April. And what happens then is the data that's sent to the system for checking doesn't match what's in the system. We've also seen it on the other side. So the manufacturer systems are doing the same thing and they're uploading the data. So with the result of what they upload to the system doesn't match what's in the barcode. Now, a huge amount of work has been done over the last year with manufacturers to sort this out, and then with software providers locally to make sure the software isn't making mistakes. So these issues have pretty much disappeared. The other things we've seen is for batch numbers and expiry, serial numbers get changed somehow or other. The software adds extra characters in, it swaps characters, it mixes the data of two packs. If you scan fairly close together, it takes a bit of the data out of each of them. So obviously that's not going to match anything in the system. The other thing we've seen cause problems is where people fail to upgrade to new versions of FMD software. So for example, we had a big release of the national system last year. We update the system a number of times each year, and we had one release last year and we saw a whole host of pharmacies contacted us that their system just wasn't working. And when we looked into it, we discovered that they were in an older version of software, that the software provider hadn't rolled the new version of the system out to them. So that was sorted out fairly quickly. We've seen, as I mentioned before, that the upgrade of the FMD software in itself can, on very rare occasions, trigger multiple alerts, and that's very unusual, but it happens. Change of FMD software provider, we've found that that can be tricky, and getting everything set up and running smoothly again can take a bit of time. So if you are going to change your FMD software provider and you need to get them in, make sure you get them in at a quiet time of the day, that you can get everything sorted. Don't have them coming in the middle of a busy Friday afternoon. You know, this is something that you need to manage carefully, and if you need any help, just contact us about this. The other one we've seen as well is where different devices in the same location, same pharmacy, are set up as so-called different locations in the IMVS. So as individual pharmacies, either you, or if you're a group, either you or your software provider will set up all the locations for pharmacists scanning locations in the IMVS. When we mean location, we mean the physical address, so it equates to a PSI registration. We've seen situations where people in a single pharmacy, they've set up, say if there's 2 or 3 laptops that are with scanners connected, they've set up each of the laptops as a location. And the problem then is, if you scan the pack in one and then move on to the next PC and try it again, it'll actually say it's been decommissioned in another location, which is actually location is intended to be a completely different address. So it's important that the devices in the pharmacy are not set up as different locations. Again, this is something we have flagged to the FMD software provider, so they're looking out for this as well. So in terms of fixing all of this, so we've mentioned just making sure your locations or devices are correctly set up in the IMVS. So there's the link where you can look in, but again, your software provider may be able to help you with this. Making sure your software is up to date, and contact your software provider if you need any help with any of this. So in other errors that we see and how to fix and prevent them, so there's some miscellaneous things we want to flag to. If you need to do manual entry, why? And the reason we ask this question is this manual entry means that you're logging onto a website, your scanner isn't working, you're not able to scan, and you actually have to type in all the data. There's a lot of numbers and letters and serial numbers and batch numbers and in product codes. And in our experience, these scans are very likely to cause alerts, as it's actually practically impossible to key in all the data correctly. We all know you type your password into your computer in the morning and how often you can get that wrong. So think about the volume of data you would have to type in. So it's better to focus on why you can't scan the pack. And one of the things it might be that for some reason the scan's not getting through to the IMVS. So we have a live status report available at the web link that I've given you there. So you can actually log on there, and there's monitoring going on of the system all the time, updated every 10 minutes. So that's a good place to look. And if you see it coming back as red, come back and show us and contact us. And we obviously monitor that ourselves. And you could try again in a little while, or you can contact us. Check that the FMD software is in the correct mode before scanning. So for example, that if you want to verify the pack that you're not in dispense or supply mode, and vice versa. So we have seen people simply trying to verify, but because they're in dispense mode, there's some situations where a verify action won't generate an alert because it's giving you a chance to correct something. So for example, if you're checking a pack to check, I'm not sure if it's active or decommissioned, where once you're in dispense mode, if the action is wrong and the data doesn't match, it will always generate an alert. The other thing, and this is a really important point, avoid the temptation to fix problems or get rid of alert messages by scanning repeatedly. And as I've mentioned before, our natural instinct with IT problems is to try again. Our Finnish colleagues told us a great story about one particular example they saw of this, where one pharmacy had a problem on the first scan and then scanned about 6 more times. Then they thought, well, maybe it's our system's not working. So they went to the pharmacy down the road and did the same thing again. So I think they ended up with something like 12 alerts on the one pack because of this trying over and over again. So don't try to scan again. It won't necessarily change anything. It may matter to us because it may generate more alerts. So on the manufacturer error side, so the sort of things that we've seen, and we hear pharmacies and hospitals complain that they have seen a lot of problems with scans due to alerts by manufacturers. So we've seen things like for the packs that were placed on the market before the 9th of February 2019, we've seen things like data not being uploaded, we've seen missing data elements in barcodes. And the reason why this is important is that legally, they were not required to upload any of the data until the 9th of February. Legally, they were not required to have their barcodes correct until the 9th of February. So some of them had introduced a phased implementation phase where they started putting serial numbers on packs before they started putting, they put barcodes on packs before they started putting in serial numbers. Now, what we have done as far as possible, where we've seen that data hasn't been uploaded, we have encouraged the manufacturers to upload that data, and in most cases that's been done. We've seen errors then in the actual data uploaded. So we've seen things like the wrong product code used, we've seen the wrong batch number, incomplete data, etc. We've also seen things like the product master data. So this is the high level data about what is the product, which markets is the product going to be sold in, so on. The types of errors we've seen here are the wrong markets listed. So for example, Ireland listed as a market when it isn't a market that the product is sold in, and equally Ireland not listed as a market, so therefore the data didn't get uploaded to the Irish repository. We've also seen the wrong product name, and we know people have come across this because we have had pharmacies contact us to say, look, the product name that appears on screen doesn't match within the pack, so that we know immediately where the problem is there. The other thing is we've had failed and incomplete uploads and re-uploads, and sometimes it's the manufacturer's fault and sometimes it's because the system is down, they don't get an error message back to tell them exactly what hasn't happened. So that's something that can lead to errors. You don't tend to see those at pharmacy level. We would see them often at IMVO level with these types of spikes that I've mentioned. So in relation to our activity to fix these, I've already mentioned to you various activities been undertaken with MAHs. How can you in hospitals and pharmacies help with this? The big thing is keep scanning. So if you keep scanning, your scans will allow us to identify the products and the batches with errors and allow us to gather the data to go to the manufacturer and say, look, we're seeing errors repeatedly to show these packs haven't been uploaded, the batch hasn't been uploaded. The other one is let us know if you see a mismatch between the product name and the pack and what appears on screen. Interestingly, we find with one of these, if it's a batch-wide problem, we could have a batch of 20,000 packs, one phone call to us alerting us to this, we can contact the manufacturer, they can fix this, and that can prevent endless additional errors. So really useful to get this information. System errors then. I suppose like everything else with an IT system, like a clinical trial, you test something intensively before you go live, but ultimately you can only do so much testing, and it's only when you go out into the real world and you get large people, numbers of people using things, that you will see bugs and defects that can cause alerts. So these do happen. We have worked continuously at improving our testing to reduce the likelihood of these, but they will happen. And these can cause alerts. The other thing is that we see a greater risk of alerts with what's called so-called multi-market or joint packs. So these are packs we share with the UK, and also intermarket transactions. So an intermarket transaction is where, for example, you've got a PL pack from the UK, so the data isn't in the Irish system. When it can't find it in the Irish system, it sends a message to the European hub that goes looking for the data, will find it in the UK system. So a message has to go from our system to the hub, to the UK system, from the UK system back to the hub and back to us. So there's a lot more transactions going on, and basically more can go wrong. So in the intermarket example, in that situation, if the UK system is down temporarily, that will cause a problem. If the hub is having a problem, that will lead to an alert. So this is why these are trickier. And we have large numbers of these packs in Ireland. So we have large numbers of multi-market packs, and we also have large numbers of unlicensed medicines from the UK. As I've mentioned, system issues can lead to incomplete data upload, and alerts when packs are scanned by end users. So in relation to these errors, how to avoid or fix them. So I've mentioned IMVO, and we also work with the other NMVOs. We collaborate to do a lot of testing of all our systems work together. We're constantly testing, and we're constantly improving the testing, and we're constantly analysing the alerts and improving our knowledge of what types of alerts we see when there are system related issues, and continuous bug fixing and system refinement. So a bit like the apps that you have on your phone, you'll see they're constantly releasing updates to fix bugs. We're doing exactly the same with the national system. So how can pharmacies and hospitals help? So as before, just keep scanning, because the more you scan, the more we see the problems, and the more we can then have information at our disposal to help us fix them. So just very briefly about use and learn. Just to remind you, during the use and learn period, you are expected to scan all packs. So that has been the advice since the start. We know there was a drop-off in scanning when COVID came along because people were under pressure, but certainly the PSI has indicated now it expects everyone to be scanning as normal again, and that's been the advice since the end of July. If there is an alert during this period, you continue to supply the pack unless you have an overriding concern that it's falsified. So something just doesn't look quite right about it. It's very important that you follow up on that. You know, and to a certain extent, that's what you would have always done, and that's how falsified packs were picked up before now. If the pack looks like it has been tampered with, do not supply it even if the barcode scan was fine. And the reason we mentioned that one to you is we've seen a very good example of a pack this year that was scanned in Germany. It scanned fine, but the person scanning it happened to notice when they were doing the anti-tamper device that the anti-tamper device looked a bit odd. So it looked like it had been interfered with. Someone had tried to replicate, you know, put more sticky tape on or something. When they opened the pack, what transpired was there was actually falsified medicines within the pack, but the actual packaging was legitimate. And on further investigation, it transpired that the pack had originated from Romania, where it had been supplied in a hospital. It was Humira. And what had happened was the hospital hadn't scanned the pack. So it left Romania what happened was they didn't scan the pack. They removed the medication to supply to the patient. Packaging was disposed of, but the packaging was then diverted off to some counterfeiter who took that packaging, put some sort of tablets or capsules into it and sent it off to Germany. So it would have probably come in via parallel importer. And the difficulty was, first of all, because the first scan hadn't decommissioned, the second scan then came up fine, where had the first scan been done in Romania, the second scan would have picked up that the pack had already been decommissioned elsewhere. But interestingly, it was the anti-tamper device check that revealed that the pack was falsified. So it is both things. It's the scan and the anti-tamper device check. Now, we were due to end use and learn this month in Ireland, but this was deferred due to COVID, and we're in the process of putting together new dates. We're about to have a consultation with relevant parties, so there will be more information about that shortly. So to conclude, just some messages to take away. Keep scanning. Really, really important that you scan, just so that you get used to it. You know, we have a lot of pharmacists saying to us, well, this is going to go away, you know, this will never take off. This is going nowhere. The European Commission is absolutely committed to this delegated regulation and this whole system. They're putting pressure on the national authorities to make sure it's implemented. So it will not change. The requirement to scan is here forever. So I think that's an important message, because I know we are aware some people believe that it may disappear, it won't. I think do what you can to reduce alerts by making sure your scanner is okay, by making sure your software is okay, by making sure how you scan, things like not scanning repeatedly the bulk packs. Contact the HPRA if you suspect any pack is fake or has been interfered with by the anti-tamper device, and we're here to help in IMVO. So anything we can do to help you, please let us know. I've given you here some useful websites where you can get some more information. And I've also given you all of our contact details. So if you can send any of your alert queries to alert.support@imvo.ie, any queries about your registration or connection to the national systems, to registration@imvo.ie, and then everything else goes to info, and you have our phone number there. So that's basically the conclusion of the formal part of this presentation. So I'm going to stop recording now, and thank you to everyone who has listened, and we'll move on now to the presentation. The questions and answers, sorry.